Hey,
Right.
Kristen, it's so great to see you again. You've been here. I wasn't the last time. But it's lovely as always to see her. She's always got such great content. I do get lots of people that have talked about, I found you through Kristin Snowden. So please know that the work that you do is meaningful and is reaching many people. But I'm
Oh,
going to turn it over
awesome.
to you.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. And these webinars are dedicated to discussing all things relationships, because as I always say, we never take classes on how to do relationships. We kind of just learn by role modeling from the adults around us, the culture that we're exposed to. And that can cause a lot of mistakes being made, a lot of suffering and struggling that might go on during our best attempts to do relationships with other flawed human beings. So a lot of my webinars are focused on what goes wrong in relationships: lying, cheating, sneaking around, hidden addictions, emotional abuse, etc. So I thought I would take a moment to talk about what could possibly go right in a relationship. We're never really given like, these are relationship goals, or we are, but I think we get them through many different cultural filters. As I think as time goes on, our definition of what a good relationship is changes as our values and understandings change. So I kind of wanted to revisit that topic and explore what the relationship experts kind of all collectively say makes a healthy relationship. And by the way, I'm going to use the word healthy, but if that doesn't work for you, it's just kind of like a balanced relationship, a relationship where you feel safe in it, a relationship that might work for you better than other relationships, etc. Um, because I think it's really important, because many of you here are here because a relationship has not been working. You're in some level of crisis. You're really struggling and trying to move towards change. What's happening right now is not working for you. You might have uncovered deep, really painful betrayal, uncovered lies, unknown addictions. There's maybe just a general lack of safety in your relationship, security, intimacy, or maybe you're just even longing for something more. This just this relationship with your partner is just not fulfilling and working for you. So I wanted to let you know what the end goal might be. So as I'm saying this, I want to warn you, it might be a little triggering for those of you who are in in the trenches right now, in the pain, hearing what a healthy relationship might be or could be can be very upsetting, and there can be a lot of feelings of grief and anger and hurt. But I think it's important we know what we're doing this all for, why we're going to couples therapy, why our partner or we are going to some form of treatment, why we're kind of feeling like we're staying in there and pulling our sleeves up, attending these webinars. We need to know why, like what we're shooting for here. So this is a list, a general list of collections of various relationship experts, what they kind of all say make healthy relationships, healthy attachment, feelings of safety and intimacy. Some of them, just if you want to look back on their work, are some things that, even Dr. Rob Weiss have said what makes healthy recovery, healthy intimacy, healthy connection. I enjoy attachment theorists and interpersonal neurobiologists, such as like Dr. Dan Siegel, couples therapy experts like the Gottmans, Dr. John Gottman and his partner, who literally have relationship labs and they follow relationships over decades and kind of collect data about what contributes to joy and contentment and meaning in people's lives. And I think Brene Brown's work on understanding what helps people feel a sense of belonging and a willingness to be vulnerable, kind of show yourself to the world. I think that work is helpful in understanding what healthy relationships are. Plus, I think this information will help you create a list maybe of a daily inventory, a list that might help you kind of say, are we making progress we're doing a lot of therapy. My partner's maybe going to treatment or going to meetings. Are we making progress in this direction, or are we stagnant? And that might be a cue for you to like, do I need to tighten up my boundaries somewhere? Do we need to change up treatment or recovery or the plan somewhere? Do I personally need to work on my communication? Like I said, my boundaries. So a list of, healthy versus unhealthy relationships can kind of help you do that check-in with yourself and with your partner. And I also, before I dive into this, want to emphasize that ultimately you have to kind of answer this question for yourself. This is your relationship, your life. So I can kind of quote expert opinion. I can tell you clinically what I've seen. I can tell you what I personally feel like works for me. But ultimately, you have to really sit down, and maybe even after a webinar like this, sit down and journal a little bit and ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to build my life with? What do I want my life and my various relationships to look like? How do I want to feel and live in the context of these relationships? You get to set your own boundaries. You get to decide if you want to stay or go. So just keep that in mind. These are just lists and suggestions. So let's start with the not so great stuff. This is a general list of things I see and what experts cite as signs of unhealthy relationships, imbalanced relationships, so to speak. The most obvious sign is when there is a presence of chronic and consistent lying, abuse, neglect of any kind, period. Neglect, by the way, and we'll talk a little bit more about this concept of attunement, but neglect can be as simple as someone, crying, saying, it's really upsetting me that you don't want to go to couples therapy. I'm really struggling in this relationship. And the person just kind of says, well, get over it. I don't like it. That is neglect, because that's someone who is supposed to be a trusted loved one. You're asking for a need to be met. You're telling them clearly you're in a state of struggle, and they just either don't want to hear it, aren't responding to it, aren't validating it. So that's what neglect is. Unhealthy relationships have regular incidences of shaming and belittling. And so that's kind of a level of like emotional abuse. Now, shaming's, saying that there's basically something wrong with you. You're bad, you're wrong, you're not a man, you're a woman that's too needy, things like that. Those are direct hits at someone in their personified human state, right? There's a big difference. If you've seen any of my Brene Brown shame videos, there's a big difference between saying, you said you were going to call at 6 p.m. You didn't call me at 6 p.m. I'm really upset that you made that choice. Like, I don't like when you make promises and commitments and you didn't follow through with them. That's very different than, you're a liar. You are, you never say you are, a horrible human being. You are a loser that can't say what he's, follow through with what he's going to say. Your sorry excuse for a human at all. Like, there's a big difference in the way you communicate wants and needs, or pain and suffering. And by the way, I'm going to pause for a minute to say a lot of these things on the list, I think betrayed partners and addicts, when they're in their not so great moments, will do these things just by accident, by reactivity. But the idea is that once you know better and you become aware that these are patterns, or these are not so great parts of yourself that happen when you're in crisis or struggle, the idea is that you're just supposed to take that information and try to move out of it slowly and progressively. So this list isn't meant to be shaming you, saying you're doing a horrible job at relationships. It just, again, might be a cue that you need to kind of, take a step back and figure out a better way to engage with your partner. Okay, so next is In an unhealthy relationship, there's definitely a presence of a power over and maybe a power under. So one or the other is constantly questioning their value and worth in the relationship, the other person's value and worth. There might be some game playing. There's maybe regular threats. If you don't do this, I'm gonna leave, or I'm not gonna talk to you, stonewall you. You don't get to be invited to something. There's ultimatums. Now, again, sometimes these are done in context of, you can do it in a way that there's consequences. Like if you choose not to go to 12-step meetings or choose not to go to treatment, then I don't think that this relationship is going to feel very safe for me. And I don't think that this is going to be a very palatable place for me to stay. So I'm going to need you to leave. So there's a difference between having conflict and adversity and setting boundaries and consequences versus threats. I'm going to divorce you and I'm going to take all your money and I'm going to leave with all the kids and everything. And you're going to, I've seen relationships where there's just constant threat. I'm going to turn you in for this. I'm going to shame you publicly for this. Trying to basically coerce the person out of fear. I'm going to leave you and then I'm going to leave you with no money and you're not going to have anything or anybody, and who's going to love you. Quid pro quo. Quid pro quo is the idea that I do something to get something. There's transactional. So, I'm going to go do this thing for my partner, but that means that they need to forgive me for the thing that happened yesterday. And there's this idea that one behavior is supposed to cancel out the other, instead of actually talking about the fact that that behavior that you did that really hurt my feelings. I need to understand why you did it and why you ignored the boundary, why you didn't make better choices. So this idea of there's this transactional relationship. I have sex with you, so you stop complaining, or I do this for you to make up for this other thing that I did that you were angry at me for not doing. Those are attempts to kind of control through manipulation, not through understanding one another and giving each other time and space and validation. In unhealthy relationships, there's what we call chameleonizing. That's my favorite word. If it's not patented or copyrighted, I need to copyright that word. But I use that word for helping, chameleons, when they come into an environment, they can kind of change the color of their skin. And a lot of people, a lot of us, some of our superpowers are being able to walk into a room, assess, okay, they need me to be smart in this room. Okay, they need me to be funny in this room. Okay, they need me to be very serious in this room. Okay, they need me to be dismissive and kind of joking or whatever. A relationship shouldn't be, I'm assessing the situation and I'm changing who I am, what I want to say, what I'm not going to say, all based on trying to get a very specific outcome, right? I'm afraid to set boundaries. I'm afraid to set consequences because I'm afraid he's going to get angry and leave. Or, I'm afraid to tell her that I relapsed, or that I had this moment that I know is in my middle circle that I should tell her about. That we agreed I would tell her if this person contacted me again, but I'm afraid she's going to get too angry. So that's that idea that instead of being me and transparent, and also knowing that we can talk through adversity, work through conflict, I just start changing who I am, what I'm willing to say, what I'm going to be in all my different environments to avoid conflict, to kind of create a facade of connection and please and appease everyone. And I'm not really being myself. In unhealthy relationships, there's often you move from just one intense moment to the next. So, or the converse, complete opposite end is that there's total disconnection and total absence of engagement between you and the other person entirely, right? So you're just making decisions on your own. You're not asking, you don't have a teammate, or you are just moving from one argument, one conflict to maybe we're just ignoring, we're tiptoeing around the big issues, and then all of a sudden another big argument. And you just find the pace of the relationship just moves constant intense moment to the next intense moment, and then just tiptoeing on eggshells trying to avoid. And because of that, there's also no repair attempts. This is a huge part of healthy versus unhealthy relationships, is can the relationship engage in conflict successfully? That's a huge indicator whether or not a relationship is going to feel safe, and I'll talk about that more. But when there is a rupture in the relationship, there's no attempt to repair. That is not a good sign. There is absence of honesty, transparency, vulnerability, and intimacy. And there is more sense of a fear of harm, distrust, than the complete opposite, which is that I have a teammate and a person. There's also in an unhealthy relationship a sign that it's not going very well is there's a very strong focus on what's wrong with your partner, what's wrong with the relationship. There's just a really big wall of criticism where I am just incapable of seeing anything good about what's happening, anything good about this person. The Gottmans say, there's really bad red flag signs that a relationship's in big trouble, and that's a huge sign. Is how your filter, your view of your partner in the relationship is. So let's shift over to what the goal post is. What we're paying the money for, what we're sitting in these webinars for, what we're talking about our feelings and doing groups and stuff is because we're trying to move slowly to this side, which is the healthier, more balanced, more safe, more connected relationships. Now, the best way I've tried to teach clients about what is healthy relationships, and this goes for all relationships, not just your partner, but like children and family and friends, is for those of you who follow me, I like to kind of think of us not as like just, hi, I'm Kristin, but I'm a nervous system. Like I have a system that's constantly like scanning for potential threats. I get really happy when I hear great news. I get really scared when I hear scary things or bad things. Anytime life is not predictable and consistent, my nervous system gets shuffled around. And I kind of work off the feedback loop system of other nervous systems around me, their body language, their voice, their choices, their behaviors. So I define a healthy, balanced, safe relationship as two nervous systems, right? Two humans that for the most part, they are more successful in co-regulating themselves, each other, than dysregulating themselves. So meaning I feel, for the most part, 'cause by the way, humans will create conflict and there'll be, altercations, disagreements, ruptures in the relationships. But for the most part, I can feel like I'm engaging healthily with my partner or someone else if I find that they more often help me feel calmer, more stable, help me enjoy positive events in a greater way, rather than every time I engage them, I feel more dysregulated. I feel more confused. I feel more thrown off. I feel more in a buzz rather than grounded. So that's kind of the main overall measurement that I think is a good way of tracking that. This other person in my life helps with emotional regulation and is a medium with which I feel more connected to myself, to this world, to these experiences that we have on a daily basis. The other way I talk about it is that they help me create a safe space and place with respect, but also accountability and containment, right? Because they have their own boundaries and consequences that allow kind of me to do me, let me be me, and I have a secure base to launch from. That secure base is that safer co-regulating pair bonded state with my partner, where they're kind of the witnesses to my experiences, and I'm a witness and a companion to their experience. I'm going to note that, Dr. Rob and other people like Stan Tatkin talk a lot about this really well, which is pair bonded people who have this secure launch, the secure place to launch into life with, find that they are able to navigate good and bad experiences more successfully. So meaning they tend to choose healthier choices, right? They phone a friend, they go for walks, they do deep breathing, exercising, rather than have a double life of addiction, substance abuse, extreme rage, overworking to exhaustion, etc. And they tend to report, those with secure attachment, that they have feel more fulfilled and have more meaningful relationships. And another interesting thing is that those with secure base feel like they are more willing to take healthy risks, right? Like try to go get that job that, they've been dreaming of getting, or pursue these really great hobbies, or pursue some kind of creative outlet. Healthy risks, right? Not like I'm going to try to drive off or a cliff or something like that, or jump out of the car at the last minute, not those kind of risks. So let's talk about the components that lead one to feel safe and secure, balanced in a relationship. I think Dan Siegel, he's an interpersonal neurobiologist. I talk about him sometimes. He's actually, I think, a professor at UCLA, so here in the LA area. He talks about the 4 S's. These are things, the 4 components that people, and not just a husband and wife or a relationship dyad, primary partners, but also parents raising children, the 4 S's that people need to feel safe and secure in relating with others. And they are safety, seen, soothed, and secure. So safety is required by our human species. We're one of the only species, humans, that require a sense of safety to feel intimate. I don't know if you've watched any of those National Geographic shows, but like sex and reproduction can get a little violent and gnarly and crazy in the wildlife world. Now, granted, because of some trauma wiring, sometimes that is what happens to humans, and they'll highly correlate violence and intensity and threats with intimacy. But for the most part, human species, in order to want to be intimate, and it's not just physical intimacy, but emotional intimacy and intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, there needs to be a sense of safety. And safety is all about 2 pretty specific, easy things. Well, not easy, but it's predictability and consistency. So anytime the body experiences something out of the realm of like, "Ooh, I didn't see that coming," or "This is out of my normal routine. I didn't expect this. I'm not sure how to deal with this thing." Your body will feel unsafe. It doesn't mean that you can't get through it. In fact, most of life is about us learning how to navigate when things happen that are not predictable and not consistent. But if we have safe, attached people with us, they can help us successfully navigate it. So something also that helps you feel safe in the relationship is, like I said, when there is repair, when anyone behaves out of the realm of predictable or consistent. So in a relationship, do you want to know when you need to have a conversation? Every time either you or that other person did something that was inconsistent or unpredictable to their just normal behavior. When you look back on why things are so upsetting with your partner, it'll be like, how could you have done that without thinking about me and like how I would react to that? Or I didn't marry someone who made those bad choices or prioritize their decisions in that way. I'm so shocked that you would prioritize your decisions that way, or ignore these values, or ignore these goals. What's underlining all that is you did not act predictably or consistent to like the person that I thought you were. And that's a major struggle. And anytime that happens in the relationship, there has to be repair. And if you do not repair, your body can experience that as betrayal, or definitely like, okay, you're not someone to trust and bring into my world. And also, you're not going to experience safety in a relationship if there's a more of a sense of fear and threats present, such as, will this person lie? Will this person abandon me? Will this person reject me? Will they harm me, literally harm me, financially harm me, emotionally harm me? You're not going to feel safe in the relationship unless those exist. Next category is seen. Dan Siegel uses the word attunement. Are you able to use your super ninja skills to connect with their body language, their tone of voice? I've told you, if you follow these webinars, I joke that we as humans have superpowers. We have the ability to sense someone's kind of body language, and if it's jerky and I have fast movement, and it upregulates my body as a cue to say like something's wrong. It's just kind of a natural thing. We have like mirror neurons where we kind of pick up the energy of somebody else. It's made for us to feel safe and notice if there's like a threat going on, but we can actually hone that skill to become attuned with our partners, because we see the baseline, we see when they're stable, we see when they're super dysregulated, and I can use that skill to attune to are you having a hard day? What's going on? Right now I have 2 female teenagers, and there's a lot of attuning, just they can walk into the car and slam the door and be like, "Whew, how's it going today?" Like, or just even just the breaths that they're taking or the movement they make. That's a really important part if we want to move into the healthy relationship world, is we need to connect with our own bodies and understand the energy we're putting off when we're in a particular state, but also use those skills to kind of attune to what's going on with them, connect with their body language, their tone, kind of the energy of what they're putting off, and come to understand their inner life. And of course, all those things you need to start connecting with yourself, internally, before you can start doing it with another person. It's a practice. Seen. If I want to be seen, I need to be able to listen, to understand, and not to respond and defend when I'm communicating with another person, but I need to be around a partner who knows how to listen, to understand me, not constantly come up with a response or defense or anything like that. So the communication has to be, I'm just listening to hear you. I'm listening to understand. I don't necessarily need to agree with you. I'm just supposed to understand your inner life, what's going on with you, what's your perspective. So there also has to be a willingness to be vulnerable, share intimacy intellectually, emotionally, physically, and ability, therefore, then to approach conflict head on. I told you this conflict part is really, really important. A lot of the work that people sometimes have to do once, the addiction is stabilized, once the crisis is managed, is learning how to engage in current and future conflict and adversity in an effective way. Soothed, that's the third one. Soothing is really important. It's connected to the first 2 things, right? Me, again, internally understanding what's going on with me. If I'm feeling dysregulated, I'm stressed, I'm afraid, I'm angry, I'm excited and happy, and being responsible for knowing what I need to do to take care of myself and my inner state, but also know that that's what pair bonding is for. That's what people in our lives are also for. They're supposed to be walking alongside of us to co-experience and co-regulate what we're going through emotional touch. There's studies that show that if I come in and I have a calmer heart rate and calmer stress hormones, and I start talking quietly with slow body movements, I can lower your heart rate, calm your nervous system down. So there's an importance after you attune with someone to start using your superpowers of attunement to say, okay, I need to ask questions. I need to stay curious. Do they like back rubs? Do they need eye contact? Um, and really start learning what's my responsibility for soothing and caring for needs that I have, and what I need to do to ask for others to help me in soothing. I need to go for a walk. Do I need to go for a walk by myself, or do I need to go for a walk with somebody else? I'm feeling really upregulated now. So anything I say, it might not go very pretty. So I need to take a break, but then we do need to come back and talk about this later, because it is something I'm upset about. And then lastly, secure is the fourth S. And when those first three things, safety, there's a sense of safety in this relationship. I feel seen in this relationship. We have the ability I can soothe myself, and I can ask to help to be soothed when necessary. Those create senses of safety where boundaries are respected on both sides, right? We can respect that you are an autonomous human being. You have your own passions and goals and life. I have the same. But we also understand that we've made commitments and promises to each other as partners to prioritize helping the other person feel safe, help the other person, live their life in a way that helps them feel fulfilled. You respect that I am me, and I have to do my life. I have to sleep with myself at night, but I am part of a dyad, right? A two-person system or an entire family system, and make decisions from that place. And I think another really important sign of a healthy relationship, besides repairing conflict, is when someone is able to share their good, bad, light, and dark, that we've created this sense of safety and intimacy and vulnerability. So I'm not just willing to go to my person when I am really excited because I have this really great news, but also I can come and be like, I feel like a failure as a parent. I feel like I am actively screwing up my children. Um, and I may be looking for just like validation and comfort and just a place to like have somebody listen to me. And I know that they're not going to take that and be like, well, yeah, you do always do X, Y, and Z, right? And that there's this understanding, we screw up sometimes and say stuff like that, but there's this understanding that the person's not going to take my fears and my vulnerabilities and weaponize it against me and use it to hurt me. So I'm going to close with just a few little elements too that I like to see in relationships, kind of, relationship goals, hashtag relationship goals. Is that there's this sense that you are teammates, right? That you are not arguing to change the other person or to prove that you're right or wrong, but that there's this idea that there's been an inconsistency here. You've done something that's been kind of unpredictable, or I've done something that was off the Richter scale of predictability. And we're trying to kind of understand what just happened there, where it went wrong, how we could kind of clean it up. But for the most part, we're all moving, the two of us are moving along this path as teammates. As part of that, there's this sense that I need to, and I should want to turn toward that person. The Gottmans talk about this, and this is a great little mini book when you're at this phase of wanting to work on the relationship, right? You're out of the crisis and you're stabilized. But this idea of little ways in a single day or in a week where you can make movement to turn towards that person. And hopefully that person will turn towards you. That rebuilds trust, helps you see that you can survive vulnerability, you can weather conflict, and you can weather the storm of disagreements and still survive and come out closer and more intimate. Another part of the teammate part is that there's mutual respect. One is not more powerful than the other. There's this sense of kind of equality and fairness. I think I said when it's an unhealthy relationship, there's this constant questioning. Why does this person even love me? they're telling me all the things that are wrong with me, or conversely, I'm in a state where I constantly feel like I do everything in this relationship. What do they offer me? A healthy relationship is the opposite of that. I know he or she's flawed. I'm definitely flawed, but for the most part, I think that we're doing the best that we can. There's this willingness to give each other the benefit of the doubt. Um, they're not your worst critic, but someone who knows you well enough and can use that understanding of knowing you to sometimes challenge you, give you different perspectives, kind of remind you, hey, you said this was your goal, and you're deep in the trenches of it now, but I'm just going to remind you, this is what you said you wanted to do. So you could quit or you could change the path, but I'm reminding you back in the day, this is what you wanted, right? That's really ideal. And also, healthy relationships have a healthy balance of not being responsible for the other person, right? So I can't I can't wrap you in bubble wrap and keep you safe all the time. But because you're my partner, because I've made a commitment to want to turn into you, I want you to feel safe. So when I've done something that has ruptured that safety, um, I want to listen and understand and try to adjust my behavior and my choices if it helps you feel more safe, seen, soothed, etc. But also at the same time, because I'm not 100% responsible for it, I can help you, realize there's some things you can do on your end to feel safer and soothed, that there's other people can meet your needs in a healthy way, other behaviors, other choices, etc. And that's the general picture.
Great stuff as always. I'm going to start with the parenting. So parenting is, not for wimps, but I think one of the greatest gifts that we give our kids is the ability to be authentic, that we're not perfect. And then we show them how that we in our imperfection move forward. We, make amends where we need to, we mess up, because otherwise our kids think, that they have to be perfect and things. So you're a great mom and you're doing a great job. So I there's so much good stuff. What's the end goal? I think that's really important, because how do you know what path you're on? Like if you don't have an end goal, and I do understand early on it's just like getting through the day, but if you've been on this journey, working with a qualified professional to kind of identify, here's what we're striving for, I'm willing to hold the space, as we navigate towards that, but hopefully seeing progress along the way, that we are, making those adjustments. Let's see, I can't remember. So the chameleonizing, you should patent that one. What I hear is incongruency. It's like I'm not congruent. And part of being in recovery, and so this is more towards the ethics, is learning to be congruent, with our actions, and that we are one person showing up, in that way. And I hear, when you're talking about the fear, it's, we are avoiding rather than addressing. So, part of what you talked about with the healthy is that we show up and we're able to discuss, if something's bothering, and it might not even be that it's a real thing. It may be what I perceived, but if we're always afraid, we can never have a healthy relationship, whether it's a friend, a partner, whomever. We can't really be in a relationship if we're always holding back because we're afraid. And sometimes it's been met with, blaming or gaslighting or whatever. So there's a time and a place, but if the end goal is to have a healthy relationship, then, and you mentioned Stan Tech, and I love what he talks about with healthy relationships. It's like that we too are in this, and we have the focus on the relationship. So living in that fear, is it will prevent us from being able to have that. And you talked about when there's a strong focus on what's wrong, and I think early on, and it goes both ways too, where partners are blaming the addict, but addicts are also blaming the partner. So I think being able to take that pause and go, okay, we've been in this for a few months. Do we see any progress? And can we focus on a few of the good things just so we get that relief of like it's not just all swampland. um, um, I loved the 4 S's, and I was thinking, with the attunement, like it is so. I do support sessions. They are not therapy, but they can be helpful. And I noticed even on Zoom, even with people that I don't know, it's like I don't have a relationship with them. There would be a moment where something crossed their face, and picking up on that, I was able to ask a question about something, and it was interesting. And had I not been paying attention, but I thought, okay, if I'm doing that with somebody who's a stranger, really, then how much more important is that to be, paying attention to the nuances with people who are, who I am connected with. But that was rich in that moment. But I thought, man, like that's a good lesson for me to remember with loved ones as well. And I thought, who you pay attention to with attunement? Pets. Like the
Right.
energy changes, and my dog is just, like you can tell he's on edge. And so I always go, okay, I need to regulate myself because I'm clearly sending out some weird vibes right at the moment. And then we have questions, so I want to get to that too. But the predictability. Oh, I know what it was. It was safety. I thought, because you talked about predictability and consistency, and how, first of all, with addicts, often they are adrenaline junkies. There can be that, seeking the risk, but
Yep.
how difficult for partners too. If health at risk, have it had unprotected sex, and and during COVID, all of that, financial risk, have spent a lot of money, that could be problematic for the relationship. So how difficult it is to learn to, find that space, just for the safety aspect, of that. I think with soothing, you talked about learning to find ways to take care of myself first. And I think that that's really true. I got to learn, what helps me ground before I can look for that or be that for another person too. But I really, I love that you're focusing on what a healthy relationship can be, because that ultimately is the goal. And whether it's in a primary, dyad, as you mentioned, or just, I've had friends that, weren't really the friends that I needed, that I needed. And so to be able to analyze and go, is this a healthy relationship for me? And some of them are, and or some of them with work can be, but others, aren't. So how do I take care of myself and all of that? So very applicable across, relationships in general. So thank you as always.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have one question. So I'm going to invite you if you have. Oh, there goes another one. Okay. I'm the betrayer. I'm 11 months in recovery. My wife and I are in the best place we've ever been in our marriage as a result of the intense work we're doing. And she sees me continuing to show up with integrity and honesty. Right now, I'm using the Gottman's book, The Love Prescription, to build deeper intimacy in our relationship. It's really beautiful to see how she is responding to my practicing the suggestions the Gottmans suggest in the book. And that's exactly right. You
Yeah.
didn't just read the book, you're practicing this, and we talk in 12
Yeah.
step
No, this is
practicing these things.
yeah, right. Ironically, this was the book that I point. There's a few authors that I think that just get things succinctly in a way, we're humans. We have a lot of information going on in our brain. So I need like succinct sound bites if I'm going to practice something so complicated, which is interacting with humans every day. And I think the Gottmans and like a Dan Siegel and Brene Brown, I just find that they give you these little sound bites that allow you to kind of hold on to them in a given day and engage your partner in a different way. So yeah, and again, I'm going to emphasize, 11 months in recovery. When the S hits the fan, this is not going to help you. In fact, if you try to bust this out, it would fall on deaf ears. There's a lot of anger and hurt and resentment and everything. So the moving towards the healthy relationship part tends to happen after crisis is managed. If you're the addict, or the betrayer, you have done your own personal work, and then it can be so much more effective, and genuine too when you try to repair the relationship. So yeah, thank
But
you for sharing.
yeah, and I really want to tag on with you're doing the work. My wife and I are in the best place we've ever been in our marriage. Do you know how many people, come on the webinars or, reach out and they talk about, the addict isn't doing anything. He doesn't want to do meetings. He's not willing to get, and guess what? The betrayed partner is completely unsafe and dysregulated and hurt. So you're showing the opposite of, if I'm willing to do the work, guess what? You also recognize that you have the best relationship, you've had. That's one of the gifts that we get if we're willing to do the work. Okay, next question. Been in marriage for 24 years. Spouse thinks he's doing recovery. I feel unsafe, and he recently disrespected one of my boundaries. He dismisses me when I speak of injuries as a result of his sex addiction. He continuously provides excuses for his bad behaviors and denies my experiences. He will not take responsibility. He will not offer amends. Most of our therapy meetings are spent with my speaking of the abuse and denying. I end up feeling very upset and reactive. Nothing seems to have changed. We have a 3-month therapeutic separation. Currently, I'm distancing from him for my safety. It sounds like a healthy boundary. I continue to feel hurt and abused because he denies the harms he has done. There is no opportunity to clear the wreckage of the past. He likes to move forward and not handle the wreckage of the past. We see a therapist, but I become very reactive to my spouse who continues to deny his harms. I'm desperate to hear advice or suggestions. Kristin, what have you got?
I mean, I see the therapeutic separation as at least changing up the dynamic. I think because separating from our life partner is so scary, sometimes we will kind of sit in that really uncomfortable, really unsafe, but nonetheless stagnant place because it just feels a little less uncertain and a little less painful than the idea of restarting our life without this person. But at the same time, what I'm hearing and seeing is that it's not been working. You still, you kind of listed all the things that I said for the unhealthy relationship. There's just a lack of safety, lack of accountability, lack of prioritizing this relationship. And you're trying to change it up with a therapeutic separation because sometimes that space and those boundaries and really following through with them can help the betraying partner create clarity or understanding of what they really want, what they want their priorities to be, maybe create a little bit of discomfort, a little bit more discomfort that might make them change their behaviors and choices. We don't know. That's the sad thing about life. We can do our best in life and still have no control of another human being, no matter how much we love them or how much commitment and devotion we've shown them through the years. So my advice is to continue for you to seek safety. And if you're not getting it from your partner, you can still create those lists of healthy relationship elements with some friends, with family, pets, and other people, because it is really important for the human experience to feel safe, to feel seen, to know that you're not crazy, to know that these requests aren't unreasonable, and that there are humans out there that don't behave the way that your partner's been behaving to you or in this relationship.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you for holding your healthy boundary with the separation. A couple of things. First of all, a reminder that if you're seeing a therapist together, the coupleship is the client, not either of you. So I'm wondering, if that is, and we often say, it isn't necessary for many people. It isn't as helpful initially until he shows up and is able to not lie, for you to do couples work. So I'm wondering if you working with someone, a qualified professional for you, on your betrayal trauma and to help you, it sounds like you've got some boundaries in place. Fantastic. Maybe, shoring them up if you need to, but helping guide you on this path as you're navigating the therapeutic separation. Hopefully there's some a checklist of this is what I'm looking for in this 3-month time frame, for my safety, to show that things are different. But the other thing I wondered about is, with a healthy boundary, if he's just being abusive and denying things, maybe your healthy boundary is, if he's talking like that, I'm going to step away from the conversation, or for your safety, you don't need to listen to that. It's just a bunch of, spinning. So it sounds like this is a person who has maybe stopped the problematic behaviors, but has not worked at all on addressing the underlying issues. And so a few things. Dr. Rob does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation with couples that are stuck like this. It's not therapy, it's not treatment. He's really good at helping identify the issues and guiding next steps. We have a treatment program for guys like your husband who are, stuck and thinking that they are, there's nothing wrong with them and making excuses. The acting out behavior is a maladaptive coping mechanism. We don't get a pass just because, we've had, childhood issues and everything. Of course, we've had childhood issues and all of that stuff, but we learn to do life differently. So there's help. We've got Betrayed Partner work group that starts again in June on the Seeking Integrity site. Lots of resources, but I'm so glad you're here. And, the grief is real. So again, working with a therapist for you to process through that grief, because the relationship you thought you had, there's grief about that. The husband you thought you had, there's grief about that. But I find betrayed partners to be very resilient. And I was subbing in on a betrayed partner drop-in group last week, and I won't get it exactly right, but I always say this is the club that you never wanted to be in. And one of the partners kind of corrected me and said, like, it hasn't been fun, but the relationships that she has made within the context, they're deeper and stronger relationships with other betrayed partners. But she also has learned that she's stronger than she thought she was. She has more, she's more clear on who she is than she was before. So there are benefits. Not that you will feel like that in a moment, but just hold on to that hope, that you two, are on a path that can shift for you, but you are strong. I love that you are taking care of yourself and going, yep, no, not going to be in here for the next 3 months. So
Very well said.
other questions? We've got a few more minutes. Other questions for Kristin on this topic, or other things she's done? I do quote you a lot because I fall into no, seriously. I as soon as I do I do something and I go,
Right.
oh, you're such an idiot. And I go, my friend Kristin would say, I don't need that voice of shame, and I know exactly where it comes from and all of those things. So you are in my head probably a little too
Good.
regularly, because
You're in
I
my head
actually
too. If you look at my other things, I'm like, well, Tammy would say that's that's not an excuse, it's a reason.
Yeah, it really, uh, we get a lot of these too, where people are going, well, he had, and it's the betrayed partner going, he's had childhood trauma or abuse. Yeah, he did. But, we either stay a victim of all of that, or we go, I'm not going to be defined by those things, and I'm going to learn to do life differently. And like the first person shared, if I'm willing to do the work, guess what? I have a really good primary relationship. I bet that also extends to other relationships. That person is able to show up differently
Yeah.
across the board. It's worth it.
I know, as we're doing that, I'm thinking, since sexandrelationshiphealing.com opened, I feel like we should get a panel of people who've been doing the work for like 2 years to remind the people who haven't, or they feel like it's a endless abyss where they're just never going to dig their way out of it, because they don't hear or see our stories where we've seen people just like have so much betrayal and destruction, just so much destruction. And truly, if they do the work, right, where they can get to. And it'd be so interesting to just hear from like a collection of people.
Dr. Rob is actually working on podcasts for
That's awesome. I love
yes,
that.
yes.
They
So
just need to
they're,
hear
yeah,
stories.
yes, they will be anonymous, but
Right.
those are in the
But like
pipeline.
what they did, the path
Yes.
towards healing, how long it took, the work they put in versus what they were getting out of it. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll send two
So
popped in.
yeah. How do you get a partner to get into recovery when they are not willing? He says he is doing recovery, had no time in groups, etc. You can't make anybody do anything.
Yeah, it's unfortunately sometimes there's got to be you have to make sure you're focused on yourself. Does this feel safe? Does this feel right? Do I feel like we're making progress towards the healthy relationship column or not? And sometimes just you being part of the dyad system, right? When you start turning in a different way, making different choices, it changes the entire system around. Not always, but sometimes that's what it takes, is, you having different responses, you setting up different boundaries and consequences. Um, that's kind of the only way that you can help them see, no, they are not in recovery, and no, this is not okay.
Yeah, and I agree. The healthy boundaries are for you. And Dr. Rob just talked about this on Monday night again. If you are setting boundaries to get the addict to do something, no addict changes until the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. So what Kristin was talking about is if you shift, all of a sudden, we're bumping up against a brick wall that wasn't there before, and we're going, oh, I maybe need to do something. And here's the other thing. It talks in the big books about there are some people who are constitutionally incapable of being honest, and there are such unfortunates. So I don't know what the situation is for you, but the focus on how do you take care of you and create safety for you, regardless of what that person is doing. That's the only thing you do have control over. So, okay, how can I identify when a couple is ready to start working on all of this? How do I know if I'm stable enough? It says this is for a couple dealing with the aftermath of betrayal. What are the signals or the signs in recovery that will let us know we are ready to start working on a relationship?
Right, you'll get different schools of thought, but obviously there is a need for you to focus on yourself when you are feeling unstable, when you are really understanding. I mean, the beautiful thing about the step work is as you're going through those steps, like realizing what you've been powerless to, how life's become unmanageable, doing these inventories of kind of the good, bad, light, dark that's happened in your life, and really starting to develop the sense of that your choices, your bad choices, how they've impacted not just yourself and your life, but other people's lives. That's usually when the couples work can become more effective, is kind of the key. The word I use is like when there's this humble effect, when there's this surrender effect that like, holy moly, me in my default state, in my best thinking, it gets really ugly. And so I need to kind of surrender to listening to some experts who know how to help walk people through this, people who've been through this, in the rooms, in the fellowship, who now have recovery. I need to like listen to them and accept their influence. Maybe my heart's softened and my defenses have softened enough that I actually can hear my partner talk about the pain and devastation that he or she's been through, and let that change my heart. That tends to be the process.
And I think if you're working with qualified professionals, they can also have input on now it's ready, you're ready to, but this isn't done in a vacuum. It's just trying to work on the couple stuff until you have that foundation of humbleness, it's tougher. So, okay, next question. My sex addict husband says men and women are different, and men get to love the physical and women from emotional. And the way he shows me sex is through sex and I'm not wanting sex, he shuts down because he feels unloved. Is this normal? This sounds really highly manipulative. So
Right. I mean, sure. Let's say some people's nervous systems require physical touch or sexual intimacy to feel in connection, but that doesn't mean there's the absence of all the other the other ways of building intimacy, nor does that dismiss what your nervous system needs to feel connected and safe and soothed. So, like I said, in a healthy relationship, there's this respect for the fact that, okay, I have needs, like I do like sex, I feel connected when I'm in sex, but oh yeah, I have a betrayed partner who's very upset about sexual encounters right now, does not feel safe enough with me to want to do that with me. And if I am in a pair bonded, dyad primary relationship with this person, I should want that person to want to have sex with me. It shouldn't be coercion or manipulation. I should want to do what they need to feel safe and want to be vulnerable and intimate with me. And then conversely, I can also, enjoy getting my needs met. That's the quick
yeah,
answer.
yeah, and we have one more question after this, but um, I really hate that he emotionally abandons you unless you give him what he wants. Like that feels so manipulative. Is the
Yeah,
is you know like
one-sided too.
yeah,
Who
yeah,
wants
yeah.
that?
So this person does not feel like he's on any kind of recovery path. He's still justifying, you need to do this for me, and otherwise I'm going to, completely emotionally abandon you. So healthy boundaries for you. And Dr. Rob says all the time, why would you want to have sex with someone you don't trust? And he does not sound trustworthy yet. It's always up to you. But so the next question and the last one, I have found my spouse says things and I can ignore. He is very immature and ego fragile. And she said, I have learned to ignore his immature thoughts and statements, but any advice on that?
Yeah, so when I was saying about what a healthy relationship is not needing to chameleonize or alter yourself. So often we say when things are said that are immature, often they can be without a conscientiousness about my heart, what might be offensive and hurtful to me. Or when I hear fragile ego, I hear I don't feel safe to be honest about what I'm experiencing because his ego is so fragile, he'll just go into defense, he or she, sorry, will go into defensive mode and not be able to hear anything that I'm saying. Those are not aligned with being able to be fully seen, share my life, share my experiences, receive validation, and then conversely, me do the same thing or allow the space for my partner to do the same thing. I think a lot of people box up experiences with their loved ones and just be like, oh, I ignore that, or oh, he or she's just having a bad day. I am telling you, I see that all the time, and that doesn't just wither away into the ether. It locks into your nervous system and provides more evidence to your nervous system that says, this person is not one to trust. Don't be vulnerable with them. Share your thoughts and feelings with other people, but not this one. And that does not build intimacy.
She had spot on, Kristen. I get it, and I am and will be okay. Great way to end this. Thank you so much, Kristen. We'll see you in 2 months. So she'll be back. She's alternating months with us, so you'll see her again in
On the
July.
odd month.
On the odd
July.
months. There you go. All
Yeah.
right. Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank
Goodbye,
you.
everyone. Thank you for joining.